Okay, we're on.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining our virtual Sustainachella. We are so excited to have you guys here today. We'll be giving some minutes for folks to join in. So hanging there, we'll be starting soon. Thank you. All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Just a couple of more minutes so we get more folks to join us, and then we'll be very soon starting our virtual Sustainachella. Thanks again for your patience. Thanks for joining. We are going to try to figure out the Facebook Live to add some music in the future. Hopefully we can do that so it's not that awkward silence. All right, everyone, just giving another minute for folks to join in. Thanks so much again for joining. We'll be starting very soon. All right, guys, I think we have a good amount of folks that have joined us. Just checking with our panelists today if everybody's ready to start so we can get going. Oh, good?
Ready.
All right, Yoni, you want to start? Thanks again for joining, guys. Virtual Sustainachella is starting now.
Awesome. Thanks, Flavia. Can you see my screen? Just double checking.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Yanni Pineda. I'm the Senior Sustainability Coordinator with the City of Miami Beach. I'm within the Environment and Sustainability Department. And today we're going to kick off this great workshop with a couple of ground rules. So while you're on Zoom, most of you are going to probably notice that you can't see each other, you can't speak. It's because we have all the videos and microphones disabled. If you're interested in speaking, we really recommend that you use the chat box that's down should be down, I would say, to the right side of your screen. You can type in questions within the Q&A box if you don't want them to get lost within the chat. And there's also an option to either send messages directly to panelists or to chat with everyone that's actually a part of this workshop. So you're more than welcome to share your thoughts and comments with everyone that's attending this workshop with us today. Another thing I want to highlight is that it's Earth Month, and we have some great workshops like this one lined up for you. And there's a couple that have already passed, so if you weren't able to join us with those, they're actually available on our website as recordings. So just go to mbrisingabove.com/Sustainachella and you'll be able to find all of them there. All right, so let's kick this off. So how many of you know what coral reefs are? Or how about this? How many of you have actually seen coral reefs before? It looks like a lot of you have. I'm seeing a lot of hands being raised. That's awesome. Does anyone know what a coral reef is? I know I have the screen up, but did you know before this? I still see a lot of hands being raised. I'm assuming a lot of people have seen them and know what they are. So, so coral reefs are diverse underwater ecosystems. They're made of thousands of slow-growing coral colonies called polyps. And so they're made of a calcium carbonate, which means that they're vertebrates with exoskeletons, and they're sessile, which means that they are that they stay in one place. So whenever you see a coral reef, it means that that's where they are, and they're stuck there. I mean, a coral, and they're stuck there. They're also massive, can be made of massive. How can I say it? They can create massive structures. So a great example of how large coral reefs can actually be is the Great Barrier Reef, which you can see in Northern Australia. And it's actually about 1,400 miles long, and it runs, so that's kind of equivalent from Miami to about Boston. And it can actually be seen from space. So it's definitely something that you can miss, and it's just a great thing to have as part of our environment. So do any of you know what the benefits of coral reefs are? I'm going to give everyone a few seconds to see if you knew. I'm encouraging everyone to try to type in your answers as well within the chat. Okay, I'm seeing some people say that they're vital marine habitats. That's a good one. Oh, hurricane berries, it's another good one. And they're great ecosystems. All right, so a lot of that is correct. So yes, they enhance coastal protection. So coral reefs have actually been found to reduce the wave energy that hits our coastlines by about 97%. They're actually considered the first line of defense when it comes to storms. They also provide essential fisheries habitats. So they provide a lot of diverse they provide home and feeding grounds to a lot of diverse marine life. Thousands of species can actually be found living on one reef. And going back to the Great Barrier Reef, it actually contains about 400 different coral species, 1,500 fish species, and about 4,000 species of mollusks. So it tells you, how important that this ecosystem is to the world. Another benefit that it provides is actually it promotes tourism. So it's estimated that coral reefs have an estimated global value of about $30 billion each year. So that's due to their contribution within the fishing and tourism industries, and also the coastal protection that they provide us. Oop, I think I went forward, sorry. So the last one I want to mention is also environmental stewardship. Some of you mentioned that you have seen coral reefs when you've gone diving. How many of you have gone either diving or snorkeling? I know that's a big activity down here in Florida. I'm seeing a lot of hands being raised, so that's awesome. I'm happy you all have been able to enjoy our waters. So I have mentioned the Great Barrier Reef, which is actually on the other side of the world, but we actually have our own reefs here near Florida. We have the Florida Reef Tract, which you'll see that it's on this map that it's located east of Florida. And it's actually, we're lucky enough actually to live in Florida because we're the only state that has an extensive shallow coral reef near its coasts. So we're very lucky compared to other states. So for those of you who haven't been able to go diving or snorkeling, I really encourage it. There's a lot of, there's residents in the rest of the country that don't have the benefits that we have. The Florida Reef Tract actually extends from Dry Tortugas, and you'll see that on the map, Dry Tortugas National Park, all the way to Point St. Lucie. And one of the reasons that the coral reef really likes, is actually east of Florida, is because they prefer to grow in, corals prefer to grow in clear, shallow water that provides enough sunlight to come through. So of course, we're the Sunshine State, and we also have, we're surrounded by water, so we provide a great habitat or the great environment that is needed for coral reefs to grow. So I wanted to kind of go over some history about coral reefs. So going back to the Florida Reef Tract, most of the corals that actually exist within it are about 5,000 to 7,000 years old, which is basically about close to the average age of most of the coral reefs that exist now, which is about 5,000 to 10,000 years old. And most of the reefs are actually developed after sea levels rose, and with the environment being ideal, they were able to grow after glaciation period. One of the most interesting things about coral reefs is when they actually become fossilized. The oldest known coral fossils are actually about 500 million years old. So that tells you how long these ecosystems have been a part of our planet. And also, when it comes to speaking of fossils, fossils actually provide us a lot of information on what the environmental conditions of the planet were during the time that they existed. So in places like Windley Key, they actually have coral fossils on show for the public to go and be able to visit them. So if you ever are down there, I really recommend going to check it out because they provide a very unique part of our geological history. How many of you have actually been to South Point Park before? Have you ever taken a walk down that walkway that's next to Government Cut? It's really pretty. Oh, some people are saying that they love going at sunset. Awesome. So one of the interesting things about South Point Park is that we actually have fossilized corals along the walkway there. So if you look at the screen over to the left, you'll see that there's a fossilized brain coral there. So it shows you how fascinating these ecosystems are, even past their lifespan. And they just provide us great information. And of course, they provide a nice aesthetic value to wherever they're placed. Can anyone tell me what the threats to coral reefs are? I'm seeing a couple. Humans, global warming, people, change in water temperature. I'm seeing plastics. I'm seeing a lot of really good answers. So the first one I'm going to cover is coral bleaching. So coral bleaching is actually exactly that, where when corals lose their color and they turn white. So this happens as a result of environmental changes, such as warmer waters. So this is something that's being seen all over the world, and climate change is a contribution to it. Another thing that we see is ocean acidification. So this is an increase in carbon dioxide, which changes the pH level of the water. And so rising acidity levels actually make it hard for corals to build their skeletons. Then we have disease. Oop, I think I gave you guys the last one. Then we have disease. So diseases like black band disease, which is typically a black ring that appears on some corals, is a result of some environmental stressors like pollution. Then we have overfishing. So overfishing is an issue because there are many key species that live around coral reefs. And so if we overfish those key species, then you throw off the balance of the ecosystem. And so it creates a type of ripple effect, and it has just a negative impact on the overall health of the ecosystem. And of course, there's certain fishing gear that can also be damaging. And lastly, we have sedimentation. So sediment from coastal projects or runoff can actually smother corals and keep them from being able to feed or reproduce. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn it over to Betsy. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and we will turn it over to her.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Yanni.
Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. And thank you for all the attendees who are here today. My name is Betsy Wheaton. I'm the Environment and Sustainability Director with the City of Miami Beach. And this topic has a special place in my heart. Over 18 years ago, I moved to South Florida because of the amazing natural ecosystems that you have here. And what drew me particularly were the coral reefs. The fact that you have a coral reef ecosystem that is just right offshore was definitely something that attracted me to South Florida. So next, we are going to pull up the Coral City camera. The Coral City camera is a hybrid artwork and research project by the artist and science duo Coral Morphologic that was brought through with Bridge Initiative Kate Fleming. So today we're going to hear from Kate and Colin about this project and a little bit more about their experience here in South Florida. So I'm going to turn it over to Colin now to walk us through the website and tell us more about the Coral City camera.
Sure. Thanks, Betsy, and thanks to everybody for joining in today. So the Coral City camera is a project, first a little bit about myself. I studied marine biology at the University of Miami, but I started Coral Morphologic about 13 years ago as a way to be able to kind of bring the science of coral reefs into kind of a different perspective and utilizing art as a way to get people interested in corals, because I found that even though a lot of people are from Miami, they didn't particularly realize that we have corals right here in our own backyard. And so like what Yanni was showing, if you look around our city, you see evidence of corals all around us, from the brain corals at South Point Park. Of course, Coral Gables is called Coral Gables after the way that that limestone was used to build some of the first architecture of the city, right down to the cement that's utilized in building these high-rise buildings. And so the Coral City camera was an idea that we had to be able to show people what has been kind of really impressed me when I go out snorkeling and I go out diving. And I noticed that there were corals and there was a lot of marine life that was actually growing right along the shoreline, growing on the jetty, growing on seawalls. And I realized that there's a lot of research value to this, to understand how corals, we know that they're under threat from a lot of different reasons globally, but to see corals kind of moving into the city, really pioneering in and doing seemingly quite well, struck us as something that we really wanted to bring to the attention of both the scientific and also to the general public here in Miami. And that's where we made great contact with Kate Fleming, who has an organization that she started called the Bridge Initiative. And she can tell you a little bit more about that, but she's been really special in basically helping us get the camera underwater so that now we can share this with all of you, because it's really, she's literally bridging the science to the public and to the education, and literally we're bridging the underwater to our dry land lives. And so Kate, why don't you talk a little bit more about this project started, we've done with it so far, and like what we're looking to do in the future.
Thanks, Colin. So yeah, I run a nonprofit called Bridge, and we connect artists and scientists to create public art for environmental advocacy. This project is a collaboration between BFI and Bridge and Core Morphologic in order to produce this camera. I grew up in Miami, living on Biscayne Bay, so I always wanted to do something here, and people at Miami Fisher at BFI introduced me to Core Morphologic. I took a tour of their lab, and I heard about this idea that they had to put a camera under the water and create a live feed of a coral restoration site in Biscayne Bay. And I just thought that was the most amazing, incredible idea, and kind of like a childhood dream of mine to be able to like have a live feed into the bay. So Naomi Fisher of BFI and I and Lee Pivnick, we all worked to make this come to life. And I think it's such an amazing time for this to be existing right now, because we're doing a lot of education work with the Everglades Foundation and some other organizations. We're hoping to speed it up so that we can bring this into classrooms and kids can look at it now and learn from it. I think that it's also such a nice thing. Like, I have it in the background of my home all the time because it's just like super meditative and relaxing. So when I'm doing work or making art myself, I put on music and I just watch this and I feel like super zenned out.
Yeah, that's you know, one of the things as much as I am underwater marine biologist, go diving, I also like aquariums, and I've found that aquariums have brought a lot of peace and comfort in my life. But what I really see the power of the Coral City camera is really being able to kind of bring that same sense of like you're looking into an aquarium to anybody's home, and you don't have to worry about taking care of feeding the fish and all the responsibilities that come with it. And plus, you're actually looking at basically Miami Beach's own public aquarium in a sense, because all of these fish are they're not contained. There's no glass walls. They can come and go as they please. And something that I find really interesting is, you know, when you're underwater and you're snorkeling or you're diving, I mean, the fish know you're not one of them. And so I feel like the fish are always going to be a little cautious. They're going to try and maybe stay, you know, they swim away from you. And one of the things that I love about the camera is you see fish coming at the camera. And that's something that I find like something you never really see, even if you're watching like a nature film for National Geographic or something. And so,
Colin, tell them about, we also found some fish that are really identifiable that we see all the time. So they're kind of like characters.
Yeah. We have a whole cast of characters. So I think the most famous one that we have, we call Oval. And Oval is a doctor fish, herbivore, and Oval's missing a tail. And we saw it from the first time that I went in the water to deploy the camera back in October. And it's like, you know, you start to realize that just like in a city, like fish have a home, and this is where they live. And so every day we see Oval going back and forth. They're, you know, cleaning algae off the rocks. In the day, sometimes Oval will come in. There's fish that are kind of like the spa fish that come and like clean off the parasites or like, you know, dead scales or dead tissue. And so there's like this whole routine. It's like a whole community that's happening right underwater. And by watching it every day, you know, you really start to appreciate that, you know, just the same way humans have a routine work, you know, fish are kind of doing that same thing. And I love at the end of the day, you can see the parrotfish getting ready to go to sleep, and they lay down on the rocks, and they, you know, it's like they vie for the most comfortable places to take naps, and the bigger fish comes along and pushes them out. And so there's just like never-ending little things to kind of see.
It's like a soap opera, but live from a coral reef.
Total soap opera, and you have no idea what's going to swim through next. So yesterday afternoon, we had a gigantic lemon shark swim around the camera. It's like, you know, I've never seen a shark besides a nurse shark underwater here in Biscayne Bay. And so to be able to see that there are sharks this large swimming around where we have to go. It's very eye-opening, but it's also really encouraging to see all this marine life. You know, we see manatees quite frequently. We see, I mean, the number of parrotfish that you see on this site is really encouraging. Scientists know that parrotfish are some of the most important fish on a coral reef because they're eating the algae off the rocks, which opens up real estate for the corals to grow. And it's just like, I like to call it parrotfish jungle because there's just so many parrotfish. And they, you know, all different types of species. I've traveled all around the world, and I don't think that I've ever seen so many parrotfish in one place. So, you know, I see this as, it's a very hopeful thing. You know, I think when Kate and I were going around and trying to get support from people to get behind the project, I think initially there was some concern on some of the people that thought, oh no, you know, you're going to put this camera in the water and, you know, it's just going to be like a lifeless desert and it's going to be kind of embarrassing. But you know, now that the camera's in the water, it's like anything but embarrassing. I mean, I see this as something. Yeah. Think about like how many cities in states can say that they have this level of biodiversity just like right below the waterline, which, you know, something.
And Colin, you've done such a great job of cataloging all the different fish, which is like on the website, there's a catalog of marine life, but there's also the Instagram that you guys have made is so amazing. It kind of has like fish bloopers and the best of every day. Yeah. And then if people like me that aren't marine biologists or reef experts like Colin is, I've bought these books. So it's like the Florida Reef Fish book, and then there is the Reef Coral book. And I've been using them to teach myself and identify fish that I don't know what that one is, so I can look in the Reef book. Yeah. I think NOAA Fisheries also has a pretty good website that you can get for free and just go on and look for the fish if you're trying to identify something you've seen in the camera.
Yeah, since
guys, before I have a question, because I think we kind of touched on it. You know, this coral camera is right here outside of our city. Can you talk more about where the camera is located and how this site was selected? I think something that's very special about this site is that it is a reef a site where Miami-Dade County has replanted corals. So I'd love to hear more about that, and I think the group would too.
Yeah, so the camera's located at pretty much the easternmost tip of Port Miami. So I see we're looking at right there. That's where the pilot house is. Those are the folks that go out and bring all the big ships into port, the pilots. And so if you're at South Point Park, if you're at the pier, or if you're at the dog park and you're looking towards the port, you can see the site. And as Betsy was saying, it's the front end of the port. They had to deploy really big boulders, and so we're looking at a boulder right now. This is like looking south, kind of back towards land. So these boulders, it's called riprap, and the reason why the boulders were put there was actually.
What type of parrotfish is that? Sorry, I see a parrotfish that you were talking about earlier.
I think that might be a female.
Is it a stoplight?
It's not a stoplight. I think that it might be a female red tail or yellowtail parrotfish. One of the things that even for me, you know, parrotfish, they change their coloration multiple times throughout their lives. I think all parrotfish start out their lives female, and then as they change from, they have a juvenile coloration, and then they transition into an intermediate phase where they're female, and then they have a final phase where they become super males, and every single stage they go through a complete transformation of the way they look. Plus, when, for instance, at nighttime when they go to sleep, they change their coloration to kind of camouflage them in the rock. So frequently, the books that Kate just showed, I reference those books multiple times a day, just because I have to check myself to make sure that what I'm looking at is in fact the correct species.
Do you recommend any specific websites if people don't have the books that they could check out while viewing the camera?
FWC has some ID guides, but I think they're mostly illustrations instead of photographs. We're trying to make a kind of a better catalog of photos. The problem is when we do a screenshot of these fish, they're frequently moving pretty fast and it's hard to get a really good picture, but we are developing like a video database now so that if you want to look at a species, and hopefully it'll be something that you can just like input to search, say I want to see what a French angel looks like, or so all these different behaviors that we're seeing on camera, recording them, and then the idea is that we're going to then be able to make this available for the public and for school kids to be able to kind of like cross-reference what it is that they're looking at, and also just to kind of learn more about the behavior of these reef fish, because there's always a lot going on. There's hierarchies that are happening right now. It's springtime, so it seems.
I have a question. Just before you continue, because we are getting questions from some of the attendees.
Yes.
One of the questions that we just received was, have you seen an uptick in species visiting Biscayne Bay? And what is likely less boat traffic in the last month? Have you seen any changes on the camera in the last month or so?
I mean, definitely seen a greater number, more species than we have been seeing before. Now, since we've only been monitoring the camera since early February, it's hard to see how much of this is seasonal. For instance, manatees are much more prevalent in Miami during the winter months, and so. But I do think that we are seeing more activity on the camera, since the lemon sharks that we've seen in the last week are not. I've never seen before. So I think that there is definitely more activity. It is, people tend to think that because the cruise industry down, that the cruise ships in the port aren't really active, but that's actually not the case. The cruise ships are still coming in and out several times a day. So there is still a lot of activity. They don't have passengers on these cruise ships, but they still have to come in and fuel. So there is still activity going on, but I do think that we are seeing more biodiversity, but we're gonna have to keep doing this for many months. So actually now we're working with some researchers at NOAA that have asked us to try and record.
What's NOAA?
NOAA is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So this is a federal government agency. They are responsible for the hurricane, the National Hurricane Center, the National Weather Service, and I think a lot of the marine sanctuaries and endangered oceanic endangered species are all kind of under the umbrella of NOAA. And so we've got, there's a couple, they have their headquarters over on Virginia Key next to UM's Rasmus. And they're interested in having us record for an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening at the same perspective every day for the next several months, because they want to look at that. They want to see whether, are there more fish now? When we go back to normal routine, will there be less fish? But really, we just need to collect that data. So, so that's what we're doing right now. We're helping to collect that data. And it, of course, there's a lot of data. It's video, so it'll be a lot to process. But we're also it's an exciting time for scientists with things like AI, where scientists are potentially interested in using this camera to kind of learn what fish are swimming by, and to be able to identify fish and be able to kind of track the activity throughout the course of the day, which is something that be tremendously valuable. In the meantime, hopefully. Yeah.
Also, I think it's incredible to see how the camera is going to be used and how it's going to continue to evolve. But something I think that the panel or the attendees would be interested in hearing would be about the inspiration of where this project began for both of you. So I'm going to start with Kate. I know you have an incredibly interesting story. You're from Miami originally. you moved away and then you were brought back to Miami to pursue your latest passion with the Bridge Initiative. So can you tell us a little more about that project and the inspiration that led to Coral City today?
Sure. So I started Bridge, the idea came to me 5 years ago when I went out on an expedition with my family to Antarctica. And I had worked in fashion and kind of more art direction, and it really just jarred me to see even the most remote place in the world having human impact. So I just started to think about how can I, as a creative person, as an art director, help do something about climate change. And after a couple years, I developed an idea of connecting art and science and creating kind of public art campaigns that can educate the public in a more inspiring and easier to understand way about what's happening with climate change and what we can do to mitigate it. So my first project was in Southeast Alaska with Alaska Whale Foundation, and we made these billboards. We took an expedition through Southeast Alaska with an artist, David Benjamin Sherry, and then created a billboard campaign and a little short film that's on our website. And then I always had it in my mind to do something in Miami. And when I met Colin through Naomi Fisher, it just was the ultimate Miami story. I grew up on Biscayne Bay, on the bay, and I used to snorkel, and I had a fish identification laminated little notebook that I would identify all the fish with just off my dock. So I felt a real connection to these urban reefs. And so when Bass Fisher and I decided to team up on creating a series of different projects this year, 2020, about Biscayne Bay and the Everglades, it just seemed like such a natural fit to work with Coral Morphologic and help them produce this project that they had been dreaming of for years. It feels like I get to look at that reef that I grew up looking at and swimming in when I was a little girl, living on the bay. So now I get to kind of spy into a very similar urban reef.
So I see that you have the video playing on the TV behind you. And I think that that's something that for those of us who did know about Coral City Camera, have it playing on loop as a way to de-stress during these times where we're stuck inside. So I'm putting it out to attendees. If you share with us on the chat some of the things that you like to do, we can share them with the larger group. But I would love to hear from both Kate and Colin. What are some of the ways that you have stayed grounded during these uncertain times, and how are you, dealing with the stress and just the uncertainty of it all? And what are you doing that? What recommendations could you give to the group listening today? I know, Kate, before we started, you showed us some of your artwork, so I'm sure the group would love to see that.
Sure. I don't know if you guys can see me though, but I make collages and I draw, so I've been doing that and watching the Coral City Camera on my TV all the time, and I made some collages that are inspired by Coral City Camera. And the other day, I also cut out like 1,000 butterflies that I put on my wall. So I've created, I've brought nature into my house since I can't be out in nature as much anymore, because that's always been something that's been, a source of de-stressing. And since all the parks are closed, the beaches are closed, I'm trying to create my own environment and integrate nature into it as much as possible.
Awesome. How about you, Colin? How are you staying grounded through this?
Yeah, the camera has been a source of a lot of, it's like I have a sense of responsibility to it, because I know that a lot of people are really enjoying it. So, it's like, I feel like it's something that I can offer to other people when we're also isolated from each other. So that's, that's a good feeling to have. Otherwise, I'm lucky that I have my coral lab here in where I live. So I'm able to take care of my own corals that I aquaculture here at home. And I'm lucky that I have a backyard with a garden that I can water, and I can go outside and spend some time in the sun, which has been really great. And you know, watching movies and things, and also just staying in touch with friends and family every day has been really good. And I try to get as many people to watch the camera as possible.
I know. Can you tell us about the music that's on the website as well?
Yeah. So you know, one of the things, the camera does have a hydrophone or a microphone built in, and so you know, one of the things that we wanted to do was offer people the ability to play music while they're watching. And so we've asked a number of our friends who are musicians or DJs to create playlists that are inspired by the camera. So we asked them to like spend some time watching the camera and make these playlists. So every week, I think since we launched in February, we've added a new playlist that you can see on the SoundCloud on the webpage. Each one's around maybe an hour long. And so you know, you can just kind of, a lot of them are pretty meditative, very kind of ambient. Some of them are a little bit more upbeat. Some of them are a little bit more kind of intense. So you can kind of choose, you know, what level of engagement you want with your music. And a lot of them are very meditative. I try and start my day, like I do some exercises. Just like Kate, I have a television up on the wall that is just dedicated to the camera, and I do my stretching and I watch the camera. I look for interesting things so that I can make post Instagram posts.
And what's your Instagram handle? So if any of the attendees want to, for both of you. And then once you guys give the Instagram handle, we are going to have to round it up and head to our Kahoot.
Yeah, so check out Instagram.com/CoralCityCamera, or just search for Coral City Camera, and you'll see all the best stuff. You can find us on Facebook as well.
And I'm at bridgeinitiative.org and on Facebook as well. And then, you know, for all the kids that are home and you want to do a little project or something, you know, why don't you make something that a collage or a painting or something that's inspired by Coral City Camera. If you send it to our Instagram, we can repost it. We'd love to see what you guys create and what you're inspired by.
Yeah.
Awesome. You send it to your Instagram or your Facebook, Kate, to Bridge?
I think send it to Coral City Camera, Colin, if that's okay. But I mean, or send it to both of us on Instagram, and then we can repost it. I want to see it too. But
I'm going to do this later this weekend. I love it.
Awesome.
I just wanted to add that, you know, we have a high tide and a low tide a couple times a day. So right now we're just after low tide, so the water quality isn't super clear. But in probably about 5 hours from now, around 5 o'clock, 5 to 7, I find is like the most time. It should be really clear.
Yeah. It's very active at happy hour time.
Yeah, happy hour on the
happy hours are
is popping.
Awesome. Thank you for that. All right. Well, thank you both for being on our virtual web series today. And now I'm going to turn it over to Yanni to do a fun Kahoot with all the attendees. Thanks again, Kate and Colin.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Bye, guys.
So I hope everyone was paying attention, because we're going to have a really quick quiz on everything that we've talked about today. So I'm going to ask everyone to please pull out your phones, and I'm going to pull up a website for you to go to on the screen now. Just give me a second. Can everyone see it? Perfect. Okay.
We do have, before we start the Kahoot, we do have a question from one of the participants. Will the camera remain in place through hurricane season? How is it secured? And does it operate in low light?
Good question. So of course, we plan on keeping it in place through hurricane season. If we have a potential for a direct hit from a hurricane, we would probably remove it. We have it secured on about 200 pounds of concrete. So it is very low risk of being flipped over except in the most extreme hurricane conditions. So, but yeah, we're gonna have it underwater. What was the second question?
Does it operate in low
Does
light?
Yes, it has night vision. It switches over to infrared, so it'll be black and white at night. And I tried to turn the camera, as you guys were seeing while Kate was talking, I can rotate, I can control it remotely, turn it 360 degrees. But at nighttime, I turn the camera up to the sky. And so when the moon is out, it's incredible. It's like there's a sun in the sky, and you can see the fish. You can see a lot of fish like tarpon and snook that you don't see as much during the day. So it's almost just as interesting at night. So definitely check it out. You can actually even see Venus. You can see some of the stars when it's really dark out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Colin. All right. Let's head over back to Yanni.
Thank you. So we still have some people joining. So I'm going to ask everyone again to please pull up your phones, go to kahoot.it, and then you're going to put in your game pin, choose a nickname, and then we'll get started. I'm encouraging everyone to join. We only have a few players here, but we have a lot of people within the chat. So we have prizes at the end.
Great prizes.
The top three people are going to get a prize.
Where is the Kahoot music?
Oh, good point. Yeah, good point. Hold on, let me pull it up. There you go. Now you guys can play. Once I start is not only are you going to get scores based off how whether the question is answered correctly, but how fast you answer. So it has a big component as to whether you're going to become in the top three. So let's get started. What benefits do coral reefs provide? Awesome. Most of you got it right. Well, a good chunk of you did. Next question. Michelle's at the top.
Woohoo! Go Michelle.
Which is the only state in the continental U.S. where coral barrier reefs can be found? I don't know why someone chose Vermont. That was interesting. But good job, everyone else. All right, next question. Oh, Michelle? Oh no, Michelle's gone.
Oh no, Michelle.
The Coral City camera streams live from where? question. Let's see who's at the top now. Les is still at the top. Michelle's on fire. Let's go. Which is not a threat to coral reefs? So disease is the threat to coral reefs, but good try. Most of you got the correct answer. All right, so let's see who's in the top three. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to try to pause this for a second. I know that it's making a lot of sound.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. And you get a second-time winner right there. That's awesome. Yeah, it's just a reminder, like we mentioned, we are going to have more workshops upcoming next week. Next week, we have one on Earth Day, very special day for us, on sharks. Really cool stuff coming up. And then we also have another one on plant rehab. If you're like me that cannot keep your plants alive, it's a really good workshop with Dr. Harper, our specialist on plants. So stay tuned, join us. We'll be sending out a survey for you to provide us feedback and also hear from you guys which topics you would like us to bring. If you go to the website, we have a list of the upcoming topics, but we want to hear back from you and keep adding topics to our virtual Sustainachella. All right. Thank you so much. And Kate and Colin, thank you so much for joining us today. Super excited to have our locals here joining us in Sustainachella and talking about, your endeavors. We really appreciate it. All right.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Later.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.